You know, it's about time I got to see a movie I actually wanted to see this year. Well, that was a movie. Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm going to give you my first thoughts on Capone, also known as Fonzo. But regardless, it's the Al Capone movie starring Tom Hardy and directed and written by Josh Trank. I had been very excited for this movie for a while. If you go back to my first ever most anticipated movies list, this movie was on there, but we didn't get it when we were supposed to. It kept getting pushed back, and no studio would pick it up and show it in theaters, so we didn't get it until today on video on demand. And I assumed there were reasons why it wasn't released when it was supposed to be, but I was still cautiously hopeful for it because I love Tom Hardy and it seemed like a unique and cool idea. So now that it's out there for all of us to see, what is it? Is it good? Is it bad? Is there a reason why it wasn't put into theaters, or was it just the luck of the draw? Well, yes and yes. There's definite obvious reasons why this wasn't put in theaters. It doesn't really flow very well, and it's definitely in need of a rewrite. I know in the past I've supported Zack Snyder and other directors that have been interfered with by the studio because I think studio-made movies are the worst kind of movies. You need a visionary, a filmmaker, an artist to make his own product, and you can't have anybody else interfering with that, or it probably won't turn out as good. And there's a lot of people like me that hold that view, especially with the recent publicity with Zack Snyder and the Snyder Cut and all of that. And Josh Trank was riding the coattails of that movement with the whole four-stick thing, and he was trying to show that this was his actual product, that nobody else interfered with it. This is what he wanted to put out there for us. And all I gotta say to that is, well, maybe the studio was right when they said that this movie needed to be changed a little bit. I don't want to say that it's bad. It definitely wasn't a horrible movie, but it's got very mixed reviews for very apparent reasons once you've watched it. And I'm not going to spoil anything now, I'll get into spoilers later, but just right off the bat, this movie has no real drive to it, I felt like. Maybe there was a message behind everything that was being shown to me, but if at the end of the film I'm still not sure what the movie was really even about or what the purpose of it was, that's a bad sign. Also, it didn't help that Tom Hardy was incoherent at times and mumbled a lot and growled a lot, and when he yelled, honestly sounded like a Iago from Aladdin. Don't get me wrong, I love Tom Hardy. I think he's one of the best actors working today, but if he has a flaw, it's overacting, and he shows that in this movie. It was actually very reminiscent of Venom, where the accents didn't work right, and he was either mumbling or shouting. He was either too low-key or too over the top, and I felt like a lot of that was in this as well. He still had some really good moments in there, but overall, just the performance was inconsistent and frustrating. And like I said, he had that weird voice going, and I'm not sure if it was supposed to be an accurate representation of what Al Capone sounded like. I don't know what Al Capone sounded like, so I can't say that it was wrong. It just sounded weird. Like I said, at times it sounded like Gilbert Gottfried. It sounded like a caricature. It sounded like too much over the top. It didn't really sound like real Italian heritage, New York, Bronx type situation going on. And yes, it's pointed out by his friend in the movie that he sounds off. He sounds like a dying horse, but I just don't know why he sounds like that. If it's from the syphilis or they're hinting at something else, I don't know why he sounds weird, but he definitely does sound weird in this movie. It's not like nobody was supposed to notice it. Everybody in the movie notices it. I just don't know why it's there. I don't know what it's supposed to mean, and it sounds odd. Not saying it's wrong, but it is odd and it can be distracting. Admittedly, I did get over it after a while, and once the plot started picking up a little bit, I kind of could ignore it, push it aside, and enjoy the movie a little bit more. However, that is where the whole flaw with the inconsistency in the feel of this movie comes in. At times, it was trying too hard to be funny, and it just really wasn't. If you don't know the plot of this movie, it is about Al Capone when he's older, struggling with dementia and syphilis and dying, and they use that as fodder for jokes at times. And if you've ever met anybody with dementia, it's not funny. It really isn't. It's sad. And they try to use it for poop jokes and fart jokes and stuff like that at times, and it's sparse, but it is still there, and it's frustrating because it's not funny and it feels like a wasted opportunity. At the end of the movie, I wasn't sure why I watched it, why it was made, why anybody came up with that. I wasn't sure what the message was, if there was one. If it was supposed to be a character study, it wasn't. If it was supposed to be a redemption arc, it wasn't. If it was supposed to be historical accuracy, there was no real history because the movie is primarily just him and his personal life. There's no actual history taking place. It's just his struggle with what's going on with him physically and mentally. I even tried to look up the historical accuracy of this movie, but I realized there's nothing you can really prove or disprove about it other than the fact that, yeah, he was dying from syphilis and had dementia. That's all that you can work with on this movie. There are some cool moments in here. There's some well-written moments, and Tom Hardy, when he isn't eating the scene, is actually quite good, along with Linda Cardellini. There are good moments, and there are some good directing moments in here, but really, I lost a lot of respect for Josh Trank with this movie because he had that excuse of being interfered with by studios and not being able to do his vision his way, and he used that as a false shield. He isn't a good director, and maybe Four-Stick was worse. Scratch that, it was, but that doesn't mean that he is a great director who's a victim to a studio. Maybe the studio interfered because they saw that his product wasn't good and tried to fix it. They were wrong, but they knew that what he was putting out wasn't good. Not to mention then he sabotaged them back by purposely making the reshoots bad on purpose, so he's not a victim. He's not the good guy here. If this is his pure art at its finest, he's not a good filmmaker. And it's proven here because he put his stamp of approval all over this. Now, I did cheat and I peeked and I saw some other people's reviews and ratings of it so far, and it's around a 5 or something like that on IMDb. Maybe a 5.8, I think it was. And that's a little harsh. If you're basing it just off the first half hour, yeah, I would give it a 4 or 5, but it does pick up after the first half hour and does get a bit better. Somewhere in the 6, maybe 6.5 range. Like I said, there was some good moments in there. There was probably even more good moments than bad moments in there, and I wasn't mad that I watched it when it was over. I just didn't know why I watched it, and I wouldn't know why I would watch it again other than those couple of cool scenes which are hinted at in the trailers. So to wrap it all up, yeah, it makes sense why this movie didn't get put into theaters and why no studio trusted it. There's obvious flaws in this movie that no studio in their right minds would go near. If this movie went to theaters, it would flop. It would make no money. It's actually probably making a lot more money now in its current video on demand format because of the pandemic than it ever would have in any theater under any other circumstances. So this is a win-win for Josh Trank. He got to do what he wanted, and he's making more money than he would have if he got it any other way. Now, that calls into question, will he get any other future projects after this? I don't know, because there's definitely talent there, but he needs somebody to help him with it a little bit, because this wasn't it. This is not this is not a magnum opus that you should be hanging your hat on. It's far from that. And if you're anything like me and you were waiting to see this movie for literally over 3 years, it's a bit disappointing. Now, if you can make it past that first half hour, like I said, you can get entertainment out of this movie. But man, that first half hour is so bad. I almost turned it off, but luckily, I had to pay for it, so I stuck with it because I knew I was going to have to talk about this movie, because what else am I going to talk about right now? And yeah, I'm glad I stuck with it because it did get better, but far from the great movie that I had in my head when I heard Tom Hardy as Al Capone. You know what? We should keep Tom Hardy away from New York accents. He can't do that. That's his biggest flaw in his career as far as I can tell. He cannot do New York accents. Keep him away. So that's what I had to say, spoiler free. I'm going to move over into spoilers now, so if you don't want anything spoiled, you should click away now, but please don't forget to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks guys, bye. So, I think that first half hour is so frustrating because of those annoying humor moments that aren't funny. Like, you've got him pooping himself, and you've got this moment where he's hallucinating. It's the beginning of the hallucinations where he's sitting at his lake looking out into the distance, and he sees people walking around that aren't real, I think. There's other people walking around the woods later, so maybe they were real. I don't know. He hallucinates a lot, though. And you've got one of these guys trying to help him to come inside because he's screaming and it's raining. Now it's like a torrential downpour. So he's trying to convince him to just come away with him to go inside. And he's like, "Oh, no, it's raining, it's raining." And he's doing his Iago impression and stuff. And then he goes, "Oh, it's raining." It's raining. And I don't know what Capone sounded like. Maybe he sounded like Adam Sandler, but I can't take it seriously if you're talking like that. Also, it's not why are you turning dementia into this like humorous subject when you the main point of the movie, as far as I could tell, was to show how weak and how frustrating it is when you are trapped in that situation, when you don't even know who you are, you don't know who the people around you are anymore, and all of that. It's terrifying, and there's a lot of really cool, creepy imagery in this movie. Some of it a little too much like Stephen King's It, but whatever, balloons and children, strange but fair. But the problem is, when you're making jokes out of it, it goes at the expense of the cool stuff. There's a lot of cool, creepy stuff in here, but you're ruining it by having him shit himself and going, I need a pee break. Oh yeah, and what the hell was he, why was he singing I want to be king of the forest, or whatever the hell, the Wizard of Oz, the lion from the, what was that? What was it? I don't know. If you haven't seen it, he's watching The Wizard of Oz in his private home theater, and he gets up and starts singing it. If I were king of the forest with roof. It's just, why? Why? You're right, Josh Trank. I'm so glad the studios couldn't interfere with you this time, because this is art. Like I said, it had a lot of really good moments. So I'm torn, because I probably enjoyed it more than I didn't, honestly. That's why I'm leaning towards a 6, maybe even a 6.5 with this, because when Tom Hardy was good, he was really good, and when the imagery was good, it was great, but it was intermixed with just horrible imagery and stupid, never-ending plot lines that didn't lead to anything. And like the whole thing with his other son, Tony, that never came up. That never led to anything, except for he came and visited him at the end. I don't know what that was about. I thought he was trying to help the police, but then he's there at the end, and none of that meant anything or led anywhere, and nothing in this movie amounted to literally anything. And then at the end, they've got like the text, like you just watched a really important biopic explaining the events that happen in the next few years. I don't care. I don't care, because you didn't give me anything to care about, to build off of. Why would I read text about what happened? But I learned more in the text than I learned in the movie. I learned more from the opening text and the end text. I learned that this took place in 1931, and I learned that his family changed his name. That's all I learned, because what happened in the movie was pointless and didn't go anywhere. It just was such a hollow shame of a movie, because it could have been great. You had a great cast in place, you had a great premise in place, and it just didn't go anywhere or do anything. Even Josh Trank, I think he's got ability. There was artistic shots in there, there was cool imagery in the dream sequences. Do that the whole time, maybe. Imagine if this movie was just about the horrors of going through dementia. That would have been a much better movie. It wouldn't have even had to have been about Al Capone. Why was this movie about Al Capone? It could have been about anybody with dementia. I guess, yeah, there was the whole gangster element, and he killed people or something. No, he didn't even. That was in a dream sequence. So I get it, like he's having nightmares about all this gangster stuff because he's having to relive in pieces these memories that he's disassociated from, so it's terrifying and hard for him because he views himself as just a farmer or whatever. If this wasn't about Al Capone and it was about literally anybody else, I would have gone, oh, you know, this is Al Capone's story. Why didn't they make this about Al Capone? They stole Al Capone's story. No, I wouldn't have thought that. I wouldn't have recognized this plot at all. If they were trying to do like a thing where they get this big badass gangster guy and show him as being weak and frail, you did that. I got it in the first 5 minutes, but then you didn't go anywhere from there. I don't know if you were trying to humanize him or what you were trying to do with the... I don't know. That's the thing. That's the thing. Whatever you were trying to say, I didn't get it. So you failed. The movie failed. And if you weren't trying to say anything, I guess you succeeded at not saying anything. Good job. Good for you. Good for you, Josh Trank. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad I got to see a new movie. I'm glad I got to see a new movie. Wasn't a good movie, but it was new. It was new. Didn't get to go to the theater, though. That's disappointing. I'm not filming in my car. But hey, do you like the new setup? So, yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing if you're new here. But, yeah, new place. Still setting up the studio and everything, the office. So let me know what you guys think of it. I like how it looks so far. I've got still so much more to do. That's kind of why I've been so messed up and slow with the videos lately. Also been having a lot of computer problems with this last review in specific. So that was such a bad delivery of that line. But anyway, so bear with me, working the kinks out. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.